sit or stand?
Good morning, everybody.
She doesn't want me to introduce her because she's scared of what I'm about to say. She had like a two-liner, right? So I'm not reading her bio either. But I do know this woman from a long time ago, when I first kind of got into the industry and started getting crossing over from Eldar to doing more things. She was one of the most instrumental people to me and helping me understand the rules and, you know, the details behind the program, how to make determinations. And she's been doing that for a lot of people all over the United States. One of the hardest working women that I do know. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Ruth Benning.
Yes.
Now, Jimenez. Let's give her a round of applause.
I cannot believe you remember my maiden name.
Yes.
Been married for 18 years, so that's a long time. All right, well, I'm here to talk about some commonly missed waste streams that you can find in your refinery. So the basics, right? What is a tab? The tab is your total annual benzene, and it's a list of individual, it's the summation of your individual waste streams in your company. And this applies to chemical plants and refineries. So it's anything that has greater than 10% water should be a waste in your refinery. So typical things are any waste that are sent to the oil water sewer, any waste that are sent to the wastewater treatment plant, and unlike RCRA, it's also any waste that are recycled going towards the slop tanks. Anything that anything that goes to the slop tanks will be considered a waste. Okay, so the idea here is that you do a point of generation, which is from a process vessel to a waste management unit. So the slop tanks are considered waste management units. So any waste that is routed there will be considered a waste. So what are the typical waste streams? Which ones are the usual suspects? Who can tell me one? Come on, I don't want to be the only one talking. Desalter effluent, yes, that is the biggest one. Another one? Tank water draws, yes, those are the usual suspects. Anyways, going to the other water sewer, like we say, the desalter effluent, if you are a refinery, and any kind of tank. Can you guys see my mouse? No. So any water draws from the tanks. So what are other BWON wastes that you could possibly not have in there? So typically when you go looking for the waste streams, what you do is you do a P&ID review. You start looking at anywhere where it could leave the waste from the process, right? And then you go try to calculate the flow rate and the benzene quantity. So you will need to do a little bit of detective work after that, because there are some waste streams that are not in the P&IDs, right? So what are those? Well, let's talk about first the ones that are in the P&IDs. So the desalter effluent, everybody said that, but there are a lot more waste around the desalter, right? So the rag layer checks. When your operators are looking at the interface, then they will check it multiple times. They have tri-cogs, tri-lines, where they look at the oil layer, they look at the water, and they're trying to find where is that rag layer in between so that they can get rid of the water, right? So the rag layers checks are a missed streams, not very often. More often than that are the desalter mud washing. So every once in a while, when they have to clean the desalters, they will stir the inside of the desalter to get rid of that mud. They call it mud washing. So when that happens, it agitates, and what happens is that the oil layer is much bigger that the phase cut is much bigger than normally, right? You could have a 40% oil, 60% water stream when you do the mud washing, when you're trying to get rid of that. So that's another one. You know, you want to ask your operators how often do they mud wash, or so. These are also there are some called black water events or maybe upset events in, I don't know, in the terminology that they may use in your refinery, but these black water events, basically when there's a problem in there. So a lot of times, especially here in Texas, when we move from, you know, the Arabian crudes and we started using more the Eagle Ford crudes, they came with a lot of problems. First of all, they were lighter, right? So the benzene content was a bit higher, was one. The other thing was that it had a lot of asphaltenes. So what ended up happening was that it would create a bigger rag layer. And so a lot of the things is people don't think that if you introduce a different type of crude or if you're changing the crude, that is going to severely affect your operations, not only at the desalter, but also at the columns, right? You're gonna have to make it to where it's a more light crude. So that happened to us here in Texas, that we started seeing end-of-line numbers that were high. And this particular refinery where we had to really look into what was happening was the asphaltenes creating a bigger rag layer and creating a much bigger phase cut, so more oil than water. And so that did create a much higher benzene mass. So any questions about this around the desalter? You go back, look at your tab. Do you have every single one of these 4 waste streams? Because everybody just thinks about the one, right? The F1, the big one. But these other ones, and are typically, the regular checks are typically uncontrolled. So this is what's going to affect your 6BQ and your 2BQ, whatever compliance option you have chosen. Yes, ma'am. Yes, yeah, that's actually typically the way that they do it on inline mud washing. Yeah. Yeah. And when you mud wash every day, it's not that, it's the face cut is not that different from the rag layer. The problem is when you do it once a month and then it's like an event, right? That it could have much more benzene concentration, because benzene likes to be in the oil versus the water, right? So you're bringing more of an oil layer there. So. Oh, the rag layer typically they go out there once or twice a shift, and they check the rag layer. So, and they will check different layers, and if you have a good operator that has been there for a long time, they kind of know where the rag layer is. That they may not open 6 layers, they may just open 2 or 3 to see where it is. It is not typically they open to the sewer. So no, it's not typically controlled. They, typically the effluent is hard pipe. These are just lines that are out of the desalter. They're just outside the desalter, and they just want to see where the interface is. Now, there's some new designs that they don't need to do that for the desalters, that they can tell, but I've only seen one refinery that has that new technology. So So he has a good point. When we do a P&ID review and we're doing a review for the whole process unit, after we're done highlighting the points of generation, and after we have interviewed the process engineers, got flow data, then we interview the operators. And what I like to do is I like to follow them in the rounds. Just show me what you do, and I'll do one round in the morning, and I'll do one round with the other shift because they can do different things. They have different tasks. Some of them are the same, but sometimes at night they do some things different that they don't do during the day. So that's a good point. I mean, always talk to your operations. Another typically missed streams is the suction and discharge bottles and snubbers and distant pieces from the compressors and the wall waste. So the compressors have built-in protection for the compressor to protect from the liquids so that they don't go so they knock out the way so that just gas goes to the compressor. So a lot of these condensates have organics that have benzene. So you want to make sure that you capture those. Questions on this one? Pump screen cleanouts and pump barrier fluid changeouts. This typically will be in your maintenance tab. They are changed or clean out on a regular basis. So ask operations how often this happens. So there's some sludge pumps that get changed much more often. So discuss with operations how often the barrier fluid is changed out and how is the waste handled. So sometimes you may be able to count it in your vacuum trucks because they'll be out there sucking out all the sludge that some of these produce, and so you can count it with your vacuum trucks. I'm sure everybody has good vacuum truck records, right? So you can count it there. Well, good. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you typically will look at a small, medium, and a big size pump and do just a calculation and then just do that one for all of them. Yeah, very acceptable. Very acceptable. Yes. That's exactly how you do it. You go to your SAP, right? And then you ask them, okay, show me those. Because you would do both, right? You would do first a calculation, a worst case scenario, right? For the different types of pumps. And then you will have like 3 scenarios, small, medium, large. And then you go get your PM maintenance and your SAP, the records, and then you just match how many of which ones. No, should not change, should not change. How was the talk this morning with Costa? Good? Yeah. Again, the same thing here with filter changeout and baskets, strainer cleaning. Some filters are very small, but there are other ones that are quite massive. So you want to ask how often you change it, when you clean it. When do you do it just in a turnaround, or do you do it annually, monthly? How are you getting rid of this? Is the filter element going into the waste shift off side, or what do you do when all of this is happening? Another thing is that some of these filters, a lot of times, are outside the battery limits. So one of the things that you would see that the regulators, as well as us, when we do audits, when we go in there and make sure that you have everything, I will walk to the terminals. I will walk to the the blending areas, all those areas where you can have these filters or tanks out there. So you will see these ones out there. So make sure you have included there, not just, and think out all the outside battery limits that go out there and look at it, the wastewater treatment plant. You will find some of this out there. Spent caustic. All right. Well, this is very debatable. I mean, well, it was a lot of debate whether this spent caustic was or was not a waste, because some people sell it, right? Well, they're under the BWON and FF, the FF and BV FAQ. There's a big, I think that is like 102 questions, I believe. And in there, you would see that they thoroughly discuss this. Yes, it is considered a waste, even if you sell it. It was something that you discarded and you didn't want in your process, therefore it counts. So sometimes you also have, when you do spent caustic from your FCC area, right? You will have oil skims sometimes. So make sure that you're counting those oil skims. All right. Vacuum trucks, like we said, everybody here has excellent records of vacuum trucks, right? So this should not be an area, but no, it's, I would say that the vacuum trucks are the things that, and the turnarounds are the things that really sway the tap from year to year. So have good records. Not only that that the operators put, oh, it's oil. Well, oil from where? What was the source that you picked up from? So they, so some facilities call them the milk runs. The vacuum trucks will go out there and do the milk runs, and they will pick up waste streams that don't have permanent piping, right? So make sure that you know what they're picking up. A lot of facilities use them also for tank dewatering. So when there's not a good hard pipe over there, they use the vacuum trucks. All right. Any questions on this one? Oh, and the spills, definitely. A lot of spills are picked up this way. Any questions on vacuum trucks? All right. Sour water oil skims. So be careful about this ones too. A lot of your sour water feed tanks, before they put it into your sour water stripper, they want to make sure that they have that they remove that oil layer. They don't want any oil in the sour water stripper. So I don't see many people putting this one in, but it's a one that is commonly missed, because everybody thinks, well, I'm counting it at the exit of the sour water stripper, but this doesn't make it to the oily water sewer. This simply gets sent to the slop tanks. So this is one that you really need to count. Any questions? A lot of people that look confused. You're good? Just go back and look at your sour water tanks. Ask them, do they have a rag layer? How often they remove it? Loading waste, trucks, back terminals. So this was actually surprisingly high. We did a study at one refinery in one of their terminals, and when they bring in, let's say, a diesel load, and then they have to load a gasoline load in the same tank, right? So they have to empty it, and typically, they will go and empty it in a tank, but there's these hills at the bottom of the tank truck, and they have to remove them. So in order to not contaminate, and it could be 10, 15 gallons every time, and you can have thousands and thousands of trucks a year, right? And also it's pure product. So the benzene concentration is high here. So this was, when we did that study, we did a 24-hour study with 3 of us who having shifts and counting and calculating how much it was. It was surprisingly high, and they were just putting it in an open sump that they had out there in the truck rack, and that blew their 6BQ for that facility. So they had to control all that area. So this one is a big one. Truck loading and marine loading drain bags. So for truck loading, well, they work the same way. Is the residual, after they have fueled or put their product in a tank when they're unloading or when they're sucking out and putting them in the barge. They have these arms, right? These pipes, and they leave all the residue around it, and then they put it just on top of a sump. And this is depending on how much you do it, it could be a good amount. This was also a bit surprising for me that just that little residue could, be amount to a lot of waste annually. And the problem again is that this for this other refinery that we were calculating this for them. They were loading and unloading benzene, so it was pure benzene. So again, this one blew this was a 2BQ facility, and it blew their 2BQ. So we had to go and control the sump. They just didn't change operations or anything like that. Well, there was another facility that just changed operation. They blew back nitrogen so that there was not that much residual when they would put down those hoses. So go back, look at your docks, look at your tank terminal area, and ask them what do they do if there's any residue in the pipelines, in the hoses. Where do they put that waste? They just let it drain there. It was surprising how much it was. Ask them if they blow back nitrogen, that reduces it a whole lot. So understand that waste. Okay. This can add up quickly. Any questions on this one? Okay, so the next one is laboratory waste. So when your operators go collect your samples and then you analyze it in your lab, then you will use very little of that bottle to actually analyze, and the rest you will dump it. So how are they dumping it, right? Do they just put it down the sink in the laboratory, and that sink goes into a tank out there? So get your routine lab, your lab to send you the routine samples, and then you can calculate a mass, right? If they could have it in quarter bottles, etc., you can calculate an amount. Other things that are surprising are product retains. So they will retain some product, diesel, gasoline, almost all products are retained, right? So that they can get a quality sample, and they will leave them there for 6 months, a year, so that they know, okay, this came from this batch and that came from that batch. If there's any quality problem that whoever you're selling the gasoline or your product to has contests something like the sulfur content or whatever it is, the quality standards, they retain those in case that happens. And then once after 6 months or a year, depending on what is your protocol, they will then dump them. So, and it's pure product. It could be gas, it could be benzene, right? It could be that. So understand how many they collect, how long they keep them, and when do they dump them, right? So that's a big one because that could be a lot of benzene mass. Yes, Tom? Yeah, you have to count it because remember, is waste is anything that can lose benzene, right? That is handled, stored, so you're storing it, and it has the ability to lose benzene through benzene emissions. So that tank or wherever that container that you put it in, that is a waste management unit. So yes, you count everything there. You can count it, once it goes offsite in your waste shipped offsite ledger, or you can count it individually, every sample. You just have to make sure you account for it. Knock engine lab waste. So for those that are refiners, you will test the octanage of your gasoline. And so they will collect different gasolines and you run them through your engine, your knock engine, and the residual gasoline that it doesn't go into the engine is another waste. So make sure you know how often, how much, do a calculation out there, okay? And the last thing is, well, I guess another thing would be that not only that the samples that they get to you for you to analyze in the lab, but also the ones that they just take locally, the operators. So sometimes they just do it for color checks or, they don't need to send it to the lab to analyze anything. It's a visual sample. They're just looking at the color or they're testing pH. They don't need to send it to the lab, right? So understand if they're taking any samples there and what are they doing with that? Are they putting it down the drain? Are they just putting it in a 55-gallon drum? Either way, you have to count it. So just understand your operation. And as they take these samples, both the local ones and the ones that you're going to send to the lab, they will have sample purges. So they will purge it so they can get a good sample. And what do they do with all that waste that is purged? Nowadays, a lot of things are closed loop samples, so then you're good to go, right? It's just in a loop, and you have a good representative sample, so you just collect there, and you don't have any sample purge waste. But go look at it, make sure you know what they're doing. Because even if they're sample loops, some operators still like to, purge it a little bit, and that's another waste. Any questions on this? All right. Non-turnaround regular maintenance. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one, yeah. So some things just get done more often than a turnaround, and they are like catalyst regeneration on your FCC and your reformer is a routine event. So operations should be able to provide you with a schedule, and the waste coordinator probably tracks this in the waste shift offsite. But understand how this happens, especially for the clay. If you guys have clay treaters, and there are benzene clay treaters. What happens with that clay? Is it shipped offsite? Is it regenerated? And when you are, if you are regenerating it, how are you regenerating it? What are the waste streams that happen with that one? This is the clay treaters are a big one because they're benzene clay treaters. So super big. So catalyst regeneration, clay treater regeneration, rotating equipment, preventive maintenance, just what we were just talking, the PM schedule. Make sure you interview your rotating equipment manager to find out how often they're rotating the equipment for preventive maintenance, and you can find that in your SAP. And the almighty turnaround. How many of you remember the tab you get to report if you have like 10 megagrams of control and uncontrolled waste from a turnaround, you get to, and it's a 3-year cycle. No, let's say 5-year cycle. How many megagrams do you report? 2, right? Because you get to divide the turnaround by the number of cycles. But if that is for the 2BQ and 6BQ, what do you report? The 10, right? Well, hopefully that 10 really was 9.5 was controlled and 0.5 was uncontrolled waste, right? So hopefully you just report 0.5. So, so the turnaround, you gotta, it's always, this and the backing trucks are the things that really swing the numbers. So understand how before you have a turnaround, make sure that you know how you guys gonna handle the waste streams. And not only is wastewater, it's also your slop, and it's also the amount that is the sludge, when you clean the tanks, right? There's gonna be a lot of sludge. How are you handling that sludge? And watch out for alternative lineups during a turnaround. You had something typically controlled, and now you gotta put it into a non-controlled location just for the turnaround. Make sure that you do that good accounting. And I think even before that is do a calculation to see if you can use those alternate lineups. I know I'm talking like it's very easy, no? To do such a thing. It's not that easy, but you gotta try. Yeah. Yes. Yes. You have exactly. You have to have a very active role in your turnaround. Any more questions on the turnarounds? All right. So this is a big one, like we were saying, control versus uncontrol. And walk your facility. This is exactly what Costa is looking for. That gooseneck out there, right? So that is not control. That is just emitting. So he's gonna be looking out there. He's gonna be putting that IR camera out there. And if he sees a plume, he's gonna go walk it. All right, so for those of you that are in cold weather, the cold weather refineries, Pennsylvania, Washington, all those areas, even Kentucky, right? Gets cold in Kentucky, Vernon? Okay. So even so if you are, the amount of waste can increase because of the temperature. So more liquids, more gas will condensate to liquid and create a waste. like the flare header, there could be low point drains, and because of the temperature, the vapor will condensate, and your operators will just try to get rid of that and put it down the drain. So be careful with those things. Fuel gas knockout pods, they will condensate more. Uh, spare pump water draw off, all of those will which you typically would not see that much vapor, but I mean that much liquid, but now due to that you will see a lot more. Always ask where are you the inventory in this, or do a bit of an audit, or work with your operators during the winter time too. I always tell people that it's a good idea that once a quarter review one process unit. Go through the exercise of doing a P&ID review and interview the operators to see if the streams that you have in your tab for that particular unit are still valid. Have they increased? Have they decreased? Are there any alternate lineups? So just try to do some in the winter too, right? So that you can catch these types of wastes. The next one is the salt filters, dryers. Well, first of all, was there any questions on these ones? If you come tomorrow to the BWON for Experts Part 2, I will give you the commonly missed waste stream list, so you can take it back. So, all right, salt filter and dryer recharge. So the kerosene salt dryers, the jet fuel salt dryers out there, sometimes you change the salt. And also they have typically their drain manually. So there is a ways for normal operations where they drain it, but there are also the media, right? That salt that is being sent offsite. That is also a big one waste. I would just report anything, you put in your annual waste summary. All of that should be in your tab. This is a small one, but side glasses, level transmitter, and level gauges when they drain it for maintenance. That's another one that is very small, but something that you want to put in there just to check off the box. This could be a worst case calculation. Let's just say 5 gallons once a year, and just have an intern count all your side glasses and level gauges and call it a day. Thermal liquid reliefs that go to the sewer. So BWON doesn't regulate vapor, but then this vapors condensate, and you will see them especially in the dock areas or where there's a bunch of pipelines out there and nobody's taking really care of those. I mean, not a process unit. So this is something that is typically missed because it's just out there where nobody's watching. The next one would be temporary applications. I mean, sometimes when I'm doing an audit, I walk and I'm like, what is that? And so you just have to ask questions because especially now, they gave you the warning this morning, I'm coming. So, I mean, the EPA is gonna come. So make sure you walk those process units, okay? And ask questions, what is that? Why do you have an alternate lineup? Oh, well, this piece of equipment hasn't been working for a while, so we just gonna have to do it this way. Oh, okay, well, get a quantity on what that is, get a sample. Slope oil movements, count those carefully. So how many of you here, raise your hands, does a slop balance? Okay, good. Yeah, do a slop balance because so you want to see how much is in your tanks, right? What is the differential? So, and what have you reported? Compare the two. Okay, this, like you have crude coming in, crude being processed. What's the differential then in the tanks, right? That should be typically what I would do is I have a line in my tab that says unaccounted slop. And I put the generic slop concentration, right? And account for that. It's very important that you do that. And also that you do a water balance. Hey, did you report all the water? Where's all this water coming from, right? Sometimes you find out that it's, it was rain, but you know how much precipitation there was, and you know the area that there is. So justify what is it that how come your wastewater treatment plant has so much water, more extra water that my point of generations are saying. So do a water balance, do a slop balance. Typical slop oil movements. There are flare knockout drum waste, rich amine flash drum slop oil, coker cell in drum oil, HF alkylation, ASO. So watch out for those. And I know that we are getting close to it, so I'm just gonna run through this one. FCCU scrubber water drain, that's another one that is commonly missed. Hydrogen compressor knockout. This can be big in terms of concentration, not in terms of waste, but not in terms of flow, but in terms of concentration. Reformer waste, again, this is highly contaminated. So your compressor knockouts, just go get a list of your compressors and then figure out if they have knockout liquids, snubbers, and stuff like that can have that. Analyze your waste in your blending area, your process units, or terminals. And the last one is oil phase accounting. So many people just report, oh, this is just water. Hardly ever is it water, it's just water. It may have 1%, 2%. So make sure you understand your waste and that you are calculating both for the oil and the water, just like we did in the class for whoever came to my class yesterday or 2 days ago. Make sure you not only calculate for the water side, but the oil side. It's a 95% water, 5% oil situation, and the oil carries a whole lot of benzene. Well, I think I am up on time, right on time, I think.